All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And we have some extra seats back there. If anybody wants to take a seat, please feel free. There's lots of seats up here at the round tables also. All right, well, good afternoon. My name is Saujanya Jamboni. I'm with the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Office of Strategic Programs. And on behalf of all of my FDA colleagues, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming to the 7th Patient-Focused Drug Development Meeting. Today's meeting is on pulmonary arterial hypertension, PAH, and we are looking forward to a great day of discussion and hearing from you and learning from you. And I am very happy that the DC metro area is giving you a great day. So thank you for being here. So I'm going to spend just a few quick minutes going over the agenda. You should all have a copy of that. We had them out at the registration desk, but if you don't have one, feel free to ask one of my FDA colleagues and we'll be happy to give you one. And then just a few more housekeeping items and we'll get our meeting underway. Okay, so we're going to start off with some presentations from the FDA panel. We have 3 presentations. They'll review some opening remarks, overview of the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative, and a background on PAH and treatment options. And then I'll come back and review the discussion format with you. We have 2 discussions today, 2 topics. We'll have a panel discussion followed by a group discussion for each of these topics. Topic 1 is on the symptoms, the most significant symptoms of PAH, and how it impacts your daily activities. And topic 2 is on your perspectives, patient perspectives to current treatment options. After that, we have reserved a half an hour towards the end of the day for open public comment. And what that is if anybody, not just patients or patient representatives, if anybody wants to share some thoughts on PAH that are outside of the scope of topic 1 or topic 2, you can feel free to sign up for open public comment. We'll be taking sign up at the registration desk up until break time, and then we'll see how many people signed up and how much time each speaker will have during open public comment. And then we'll have some closing remarks, and that'll wrap up the day. So it's a full day, but we're really looking forward to hearing from you. Just a few housekeeping items. Restrooms are back out into the lobby area and make a right and go all the way down to the end of the hall, and that's where the restrooms are. And you will pass a kiosk that serves basic sandwiches, snacks, and drinks for purchase. And I just want to make sure that this might be a bit of a different kind of public meeting than others that you may have attended. It's a bit informal, it's more talk show style. I want you to feel comfortable to stretch, take a break. If you need to use the restroom, grab a snack, please feel free to do so. Okay, so before we get started, could I have my FDA colleagues please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ellis Unger. I'm the Director of Office of Drug Evaluation 1 in the Office of New Drugs.
Hi, I'm Teresa Mullen. I direct the Office of Strategic Programs in the Center for Drugs.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sherry Targum. I'm a cardiologist and I'm a medical officer in the Division of Cardiorenal Drugs.
Good afternoon. I'm Norman Stockbridge. I'm the Director of the Division of Cardiovascular and Renal Products.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Pariser. I'm the Associate Director for Rare Diseases in the Office of New Drugs in Cedar.
Hi, I'm Jim Bana from the Office of Orphan Products Development here in the Office of the Commissioner.
Graham and Pajita.
Graham Thompson, Office of Strategic Programs.
Pajita Vaidya, Office of Strategic Programs.
Great, thank you. So I am going to be turning this over to Ellis for your comments. And just a very quick note, this meeting is being recorded and transcribed. So after the meeting is over, the recording will be available on our website. Okay? With that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, everyone. Again, good afternoon, and welcome to our 7th meeting on patient-focused drug development, this one on pulmonary hypertension. And as I mentioned, I'm Ellis Unger. I'm the Director of the Office of Drug Evaluation 1 And our office oversees the Division of Cardiovascular and Renal Products, and they are the division that regulates the drugs for pulmonary hypertension. So you have the key people here this afternoon, and you have our ear. We're very excited to have all of you here. I believe we have a number of patients, we have caregivers, and patient advocates in the audience. There are also many people who have joined us online. I guess we'll have a count later, but there are generally a lot. And I know we have representatives from industry and academia joining us here. And I'd like to thank all of you for participating in this meeting. And it is a meeting that involves participation. So this is one of a series of meetings that we've had, and the goal is to try to better understand how patients feel about their diseases, how they experience, how you experience your disease or your loved one's disease, and help us understand your perspectives, your viewpoints, and hopefully help us better help the drug companies to develop drugs that are what you need for your disease. Our job, as you know, is to protect and promote the public health. And we evaluate the safety and the efficacy of new drugs. And of course, part of what we do is to oversee the drug companies as they develop new agents. Some of you may be surprised to know that we don't actually do what most people think of as drug testing. We don't do clinical trials at the FDA generally. So it's the drug companies that do those trials. But we work very closely with the drug companies to help them design those studies so that when we receive those studies, the results of those studies, we can actually get the information we need to make very rational decisions about whether the drug works or not, how well it works, and whether the drug is safe or not, how safe it is. And so that's what we do, and we want to ensure that every single patient who enrolls in a trial for a drug provides information that's useful, and that the benefits and risks of participating in the study are explained. Those are all things that we do here at FDA. We pay a lot of attention to what we call the endpoint of a study, which is what is actually measured to convey whether the drug works or not. And generally for most of the drugs we have, how a drug works is conveyed in terms of how a patient feels or how well a patient functions. Occasionally it's whether they live or die or how long they live or die. And we want to hear some of your views on the endpoints we've been using for these studies, which generally for pulmonary hypertension is how far can you walk in 6 minutes? How many meters can you cover in 6 minutes? And that may or may not be important to you, but it may in fact capture what it is that bothers you the most, whether it's being short of breath when you exercise or hitting the wall or something. But that's part of what we'd like to get out of this today. So what we'd like to do is hear from you in terms of what you feel and how you function. And we have, 12 pages single-spaced of material from patients that was I found it very enlightening going through it, that explained, maybe 7 or 8 different patients and their viewpoints. I believe we're going to hear from some of you this afternoon. So we're also very fortunate to have with us the key members of the review team who generally review drugs for pulmonary hypertension, Dr. Targum and Dr. Stockbridge. These are senior people in the Division of Cardiovascular and Renal Products who help design the studies, who help interpret the results, who help protect your safety. And they're the key people, so they're here to listen to you. We want to hear how you view your disease, what really matters to you, what symptoms bother you the most, what activities would you like to be able to do that you can't do, even the hassles of dealing with the therapies, whether it's bandages or broken IV lines or the fear of your IV line kinking in the middle of the night and your alarm going off. Those things are important to you, and we want to know about them. And we'd also like to know how you view the various risks of treatment for pulmonary hypertension. In general, we try not to be too paternalistic here. we get criticized for having drugs out there that aren't safe enough, and we get criticized for having drugs, for not allowing drugs on the market because they're viewed to be not safe enough when people think they are. And generally, if people shout, it's about the same volume of loudness on both sides, we're probably doing things right. But in general, we try not to be too paternalistic, and we try to, approve drugs that work, and if we think there are risks, we put them in the label so that you understand what they are. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. We know pulmonary hypertension affects different people in different ways, so we want to hear your perspectives on how you experience the disease and what you'd like to see in treatments for pulmonary hypertension. And so I'll just, with that, thank you again for being here and welcome you, and turn it over to Teresa Mullen, who will talk about our broader efforts in patient-focused drug development. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ellis. And again, thank you for coming out today to White Oak and joining us in this meeting. And thanks very much also for the people who are participating on our webcast. These meetings are, the more we can engage and make it possible for patients to participate, the better they are, the more benefit we get out of the meeting. As Ellis was saying, the whole point of these meetings is to hear from patients and get the patient's perspective. And so I'm going to tell you just for a few minutes a little bit about this effort of patient-focused drug development. This meeting is one of a set that we committed to do over the next several years. And so we're doing this to develop a more systematic way to gather the patient's perspective on their condition and the available treatment options, as Ellis was saying. And this is recognizing, maybe it's quite recognizing the obvious, but that patients are in a unique position to inform FDA about the drugs that are available and what those drugs are providing and not. They are the ones that derive whatever benefit there is to get, and the ones who will experience the risks that may be associated with those products. And so we realized that we really didn't have a mechanism for getting a more systematic kind of comprehensive hearing from as many patients as possible. We have some mechanisms that exist that really focus more on asking an individual patient or maybe a few patients about a particular issue for a particular drug product or an application that may be under review. And that's very valuable to us, but we realize that that's very limited. That one person can really speak best for their own experience and may not be able to reflect the diversity of experience of people who have that disease. And so how can we go about getting more input from a broader cross-section of patients experiencing a disease and not have to go through the kind of conflict of interest screening that we have to do, in fact, when you're talking about a particular product in a particular case. And so this initiative came out of our thinking about how we could try to do this. The information that we get, we thought would help inform us both in terms of, as Ellis was saying, advising companies, or if they ask us for advice on developing a drug, or even in giving us insight in reviewing an application that comes in for a drug to treat that disease. So this initiative is part of a commitment that we made under the reauthorization of the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. FDA has a number of user fee sources of funds that supplement the money we get from taxpayer funding that helps us to run our operations. And when that was reauthorized, we committed to do at least 20 of these meetings, each in a different disease area. And the idea was that this was like a big pilot to see how could we do this and how can we get good at getting this kind of information. We don't just need it for 20 diseases. We really ideally would have it for every disease. And we're learning a lot about how to do this through this process. So this began in September. That's the beginning of our fiscal year. Actually, October 1 is the beginning of our fiscal year. So in September, we announced a preliminary set of diseases that we would look at. Our candidate list of about 40. We got a lot of good public input. about their comments on those diseases, which ones that the public thought we should choose. We selected a set of 16 diseases that we're covering in the first 3 years of this 5-year period, so 2013 to 15. And we'll go through a process again in 2015 to identify additional disease areas that we'll focus on in these kinds of meetings in 2016 and 2017. And here's the set of diseases that we've identified so far. So you can see last year we had a meeting on chronic fatigue syndrome, HIV, on lung cancer and narcolepsy. So far in this fiscal year, we've had a meeting on sickle cell disease and fibromyalgia, and today's meeting is focusing, of course, on our pulmonary arterial hypertension. And you can see on this slide the other diseases that we'll be aiming to have meetings on over the next year and a half. And there's quite a diversity, as you can see. These are a really wide range of diseases, but they generally have in common, as Ellis was saying, how patients feel and how they function are areas where we'd really benefit from hearing more than what we know today. So we're really excited to have you here today to tell us about what your experience has been. Each of these meetings, because of that diversity of the range of diseases, is somewhat tailored to the areas that the review division would particularly like to ask patients about, having this rather unique opportunity to ask for your perspective. They take advantage of that. And yet we also want to cover some common questions. In each of these meetings, we do want to hear explicitly about your experience with living with your disease, the things that impact your life the most, maybe how that has changed over the course of your disease, and then how the treatments that you're using today are working for you or not working for you. And so we understand just how well or not well those treatments meet your needs. And these questions of living with the disease and the impact on your life, the severity of that, and how well current treatments work fit right into this framework that we use to make decisions about new drugs. It's our benefit-risk framework. And those two elements tell us the context of the disease, really help us to sort of weigh the evidence that we get in an application about a drug and how well it works and what we know about its safety profile. So we find that each of these meetings really, patient involvement in the meeting, your engagement in this discussion this afternoon is going to be critical to how much we can learn and how well this goes for all of us. We'll produce a report after the meeting. We call it the Voice of the Patient Report. You can find this on our website. We try to capture what we hear through the panels, through all the audience participation, what input we get on the webcast, and also any information we might receive in our docket, our electronic docket. Pull these components together. We try to capture what you tell us faithfully to the way you tell us. The words you use to describe what it's like to live with the disease are the ones we try to put in the report to make sure the review divisions and people who weren't here get to hear it as close as we did to what you told us about how it is to live with the disease. That report provides a really important purpose for us to capture that for reference for the future. If the division receives an application for PAH in the future, they can look at this report and say, this is what patients were telling us it's like to live with this disease and what they thought of the treatments that are there. That's a very important piece of information for them. We think it may also, in some cases, this triggers the development of new tools to collect better information more systematically in clinical trials about what it's like to live with the disease and whether a new treatment that's being tested has an impact on those things that you tell us about. That's called a patient-reported outcome tool. Those may also follow, ideas for those may follow these meetings. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Targum, and she's going to give you a bit of a background on PAH. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Sherry Targum, and as I said, I'm a medical officer in the Division of Cardiovascular and Renal Products. And this afternoon, I'm going to be providing you with some background on pulmonary artery hypertension and therapeutic options. So as you've heard, pulmonary arterial hypertension is the third rare disease being featured in our series. And I've included a definition of what's a rare disease, and at FDA, what constitutes an orphan drug. So even though a rare disease is a condition or disease affecting less than 200,000 people in the United States, if you take rare diseases in the aggregate, it's actually much more common than that. So almost 1 in 10 Americans suffer from rare diseases. This is to show you that there are 3 different offices at FDA that deal with rare diseases. From a patient perspective, the first office, the FDA Office of Health and Constituent Affairs, is probably the office that you would interface with. But there are 2 other places at FDA that look at rare diseases and orphan products. And we have representatives from both offices here today. So pulmonary artery hypertension is a rare, underdiagnosed progressive condition, and it's defined by an elevated pulmonary arterial pressure. The pulmonary artery circuit is generally a low-pressure system, and it's the system that delivers blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. So the definition that I put here is that the average pulmonary arterial pressure is higher than 25 millimeters of mercury at rest, compared with patients without pulmonary hypertension. This is one way to think about pulmonary artery hypertension. There are other classification systems as well, but I've listed 3 general types. There's idiopathic, which means of unknown cause. There are types that are familial, and there are types of pulmonary artery hypertension that are associated with underlying diseases. In terms of symptoms, there are a variety of symptoms that patients may experience, such as chest pain, dizziness, shortness of breath. One of the issues with pulmonary artery hypertension is that these symptoms also occur with other conditions that are more common. So it might be that you go see a doctor with some of these symptoms and you get diagnosed with something else first, because there are other conditions that occur more commonly. And so PAH, or pulmonary artery hypertension, can be difficult to diagnose because the symptoms are similar to other conditions like asthma, pneumonia, coronary disease. And the other piece of this is that the physical examination in the early stages can be almost normal. So that leads doctors to conduct a number of tests, and I've listed a series of tests that doctors might conduct to try to get down to the bottom line of why you might be having a symptom. The most definitive tests would probably be the echocardiogram, which gives a picture of the right heart and also might give an estimate of pulmonary artery pressures, and the right heart catheterization, which is a special device that doctors put into the heart and arteries to measure the actual pressures. In terms of treatment options, generally the goals of treatment are to make people feel better, improve their quality of life, or to make them live longer. In the case of pulmonary hypertension, the goals that we've had are to improve quality of life, reduce symptoms, slow down how quickly the disease progresses, and to improve your function as measured by the 6-minute walk test. The treatment options include medications, which is what we deal with, In certain patients that are eligible, surgery might be an option. And a third option would be lifestyle changes. This is a list of some of the drugs, some of the classifications of drugs that have been approved, mostly have been approved to improve symptoms. In conditions like pulmonary artery hypertension, input from you and patients is very important. There are tools called patient-reported outcomes that can be questionnaires that might capture how people feel. This is a great way that patients can contribute to drug development and developing new drugs that can really help. I'm going to now turn it over to the overview of the discussion format. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for that.
We post the slides along with the recording of the meeting maybe a week or so after the meeting's over.
But I apologize if I talk too quickly.
Okay, well, thank you to my FDA colleagues for your presentations. I'm going to spend just a few minutes going over the discussion format. As I mentioned earlier on, we have two topics to cover today. Topic 1 is on the most significant symptoms of PAH and how it impacts your daily activities. So here what we're really looking to listen for is what is it that what are your most significant symptoms? And what is it that you can or can't do because of those symptoms? Or maybe not as, or activities that you're not able to do as fully as you would like because of your symptoms. And if you can even compare what an average day of symptoms looks like versus a more severe day of symptoms, and give us some specific examples of what that means for you. Topic 2 is on current approaches to treating PAH. So here what we're listening for is, what is your current treatment regimen? And is it working for you? How do you know that it's working for you? Can you give us specific examples on maybe what you're able to do now to show that it's working for, that your specific treatment regimen is working for you? Also, what are the side effects and what are the biggest downsides that you're experiencing with this treatment? And also, what would you look for in an ideal treatment for PAH? Next slide. So we're going to first hear from a panel of patients, and I've been working closely with these panelists for the last week and a half, and they've been really, really wonderful in preparing some great summaries to share with you all today. They reflect a range of experiences with PAH, and they've each put together about 4 minutes of comments. And the purpose of the panel discussion is to really set a good foundation for our discussion for the rest of the day. What we'll do is, after the panel is finished with their comments, we're going to broaden the dialogue and invite those of you, other patients and patient representatives in the audience, to also share your experiences. And by that, what we would like to hear from you is not just what resonates with you, what do you share, what experiences did you share with what the panelists shared with us, but also what is different for you. Build on what you've heard from the panel and share as many specific examples as you can. We're going to have some microphone runners around the room, and if you're comfortable to do so, raise your hand and they'll come to you. And if you could please state your name before you answer, that would be great. Okay? And periodically, I'm going to be checking in with the FDA panel to see if you have any clarifying questions. All right, next slide. So there's a few other ways we're going to also be learning from you, and that is that we're going to have some polling questions along the way. And Chad, would you mind passing out the clickers? Thank you. We're going to test these out in just a few moments, but the purpose of the polling questions is for us to get some more understanding of what are the perspectives in the room and also on the web, for those of you joining us on the web. And for the web participants, you can answer your polling questions via the webcast. The polling questions it's not a scientific survey, and it's entirely voluntary, and we ask that patients and patient representatives answer these questions, please. And on that note, as I just mentioned, we have quite a few people joining us on the web. I would like to extend a very, very special welcome to all of you joining us on the web. We can't see you, but your voice is being heard, and we are looking forward to checking in with you periodically throughout the meeting today. We're going to also, we'll be reading comments that are coming in via the webcast, but also we'll check in via telephone with some of the people on the web. So thank you for all of you for joining. Next slide. And last but not least, another way that we are really looking forward to hearing from you is through the public docket. So this is really a website, a space that we have that it's going to be open for 2 months through July 13th. And we invite you and encourage you to continue to share more comments, more experiences and thoughts as they come up. If you weren't able to share that with us today, you'll have 2 months to be able to go there and enter your comments there. All of those comments will be incorporated into the summary report, and anybody is welcome to comment. Okay? And just a few ground rules for today. We are so happy to see so many patients and caregivers and patient representatives here. We are looking forward to hearing from you, and we encourage you to contribute to the dialogue. We know that there's a lot of you from industry and academia and other government agencies. We're very happy that you're here. We think this meeting will be extremely useful for you too. We just ask that you stay in listening mode. The FDA also is here to listen. We are, as I mentioned before, looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And once in a while I will be checking in to see if they have any questions, but we're here to listen to you today. The discussion is going to focus on symptoms and treatments. So as I mentioned, we have 2 topic questions, and we're going to try to stay in scope with those topic questions. Those are the questions that are most beneficial for the FDA to hear from you, to hear your responses on. We know that there's a lot of different aspects of PAH, and we invite you to continue to share those comments with us via the public docket. And again, for those of you that may want to contribute to the dialogue today, but if it's outside the scope of topic 1 or topic 2, you can sign up for open public comment. The views expressed today are personal opinions, and on that note, respect for one another is paramount. And last but not least, let us know how the meeting went for you today. We're going to have some evaluation forms out on the registration desk, and we'll also be passing them out closer to the end of the meeting. So let us know how it all went for you today, and that will help us to make our next meeting better. Okay? Great. So we are going to start with a polling question. And does everybody have clickers? Okay? Excellent. Okay, so we're going to start with an easy one first. Where do you live? Press A for within the Washington, D.C. metro area, or B for outside of the D.C. metro area. Oh, that's the result? Wow, look at that. Talk about an even split, huh? Well, welcome to all of the locals, but also to everyone coming outside of the DC metro area. I know that we've had quite a few long travels here. I know there's someone from California, Ohio. We really appreciate it. And also, I know many of you took the bus to get here, right? So thank you for coming. Okay, next question. Have you ever been diagnosed as having pulmonary arterial hypertension? A, yes. B, no. Okay. Okay, so 59% of you, the majority of you have been diagnosed as having PAH, and we have 41% as not having been diagnosed as having PAH. We are thankful to all of you for being here and hearing the experiences that you have to share since your diagnosis. Next question. What is your age? A, younger than 30, B, 31 to 40, C, 41 to 50, D, 51 to 60, E, 61 to 70, or F, 71 or greater. Okay, so it looks like the majority of you are in D, 51 to 60. We also have 61 to 70. It looks like we have a great spread of everyone, and that's going to be really helpful for us as we hear more perspectives from each of you. And let's check in with the web real quick and see what the polling results look like.
Well, I just wanted to chime in and say that we have a pretty similar spread on the web, where about 60% have said that they have been diagnosed as having pulmonary arterial hypertension. So we're thinking we do have a good representation of patients on the web as well. And for the age group, it's quite similar. There's about 26%, 51 to 60, 41 to 50, and 31 to 40, actually. So
great, thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to the next polling question. Are you A, male, or B, female? Okay, so we have mostly female in the audience, but we are also very thankful to have some male representation here also. Okay, next question. And I believe this is the last one. What is the length of time since your diagnosis? A, less than 5 years, B, 5 to 10 years, C, 10 to 20 years, or D, more than 20 years? Okay, so we have, looks like the majority of you in the room have had the diagnosis for 5 to 10 years. We also have some more newly diagnosed members in the audience, so less than 5 years. And then we also have some representation from longer periods of diagnosis, so 10 to 20 years and more than 20 years. Great. And can I check in with the web quickly to see what the web is looking like?
It's about the same, it looks like, with a few more of people who have been diagnosed for a long time.
Okay, great, thank you. So now let's move on to our topic 1 panelists. And on that note, could I have my topic 1 panelists come on up and take a seat and bring your name cards with you? So once again, just to remind everyone, and we're going to have the slide up in just a moment, but topic 1 is on the most significant symptoms of PAH and their impact on daily activities. And I know our panel members have been working very hard to prepare these comments, so thank you so much. So what I'll have you guys do is introduce yourselves before it's, as it's your turn to speak, and make sure you press the little red button to make sure that the microphone is turned on. Oh, okay, we'll make sure we get one for you. No problem. Okay, so shall we start with you, Colleen?
Sure.
Okay.
Is this on?
You have to press.
Sorry. Hello. Hi, I'm Colleen Connor. Thank you for having us today to the FDA. So I'm just going to quick start because I prepared some comments. My most significant symptom is shortness of breath. I was misdiagnosed for asthma for 2.5 years prior to the PH diagnosis. At work, early on, I couldn't catch my breath to give a presentation, or even to keep up with my peers walking down the hallway. It was very embarrassing, and I would tell people that I was having a bad asthma day. Once diagnosed, people were much more forgiving because it was evident from the oxygen that I needed to wear that I had a breathing problem. Early on, I would wake up breathless just from rolling over in my bed. I was out of breath getting into my car. The medications have helped, but I'm still much more short of breath than my peers, and I'm quite limited in what I can physically do. When I am active, my oxygen requirement goes up dramatically, and my heart rate increases. Over the last 6 years, I've experienced a very wide spectrum of health due to pH. And in bad times, I've had months of not being able to accomplish much, walk up the stairs, do household chores, or leave the house in any weather condition other than the ideal. I needed to purchase a scooter to go almost anywhere outside my home. As an example, I couldn't walk from my car to my son's baseball field. I had deteriorated to the point I was encouraged to list for lung transplant, and I've since stabilized and improved, and the transplant plans are on hold. At one point, I had a dramatic symptom of extreme dizziness, which accelerated over a matter of several weeks, and my cardiac output had fallen dramatically. I was not perfusing oxygen to my brain, and I could no longer think or read. They put me on the IV medication, and within a week and a half, I had regained my ability to think, the buzzing in my head went away, and I was able to read again. I am very grateful to have this IV medication. But even on the best days, my life is nowhere near normal. Things people take for granted, like a peaceful night's sleep, are not in the cards for us. I sleep with my oxygen and my IV, and I sleep much lighter. As I'm concerned, I will kink my line and the alarm will sound. This has happened many times, and I try frantically to try to fix the kink as my husband looks on helplessly. And my biggest fear is that I worry that someday the blockage will be on the inside of me, and it'll be an emergency situation. Because my medicine has a half-life of 4 minutes, and then if interrupted, it can result in extreme rebound pulmonary hypertension effects and even death. In addition, I worry that I'll pull the IV line out accidentally if I flip around in my sleep. I also worry that I'll catch a life-threatening infection. I also have the oxygen on, so it's just best not to turn over, for fear some point my tubing will become a noose around my neck. And yes, this happens. Showers are difficult. Is the water bandage on securely? Is the IV bag pump securely hung somewhere where I can get under the water but it remains dry? Should I take off my oxygen so I don't have water shooting up my nose and I have more mobility and less tubing in the shower, or do I take it off and let my heart race? Daily activities such as cooking, washing dishes, family errands are often exhausting. Some days I just can't manage the workload and we order food in several days a week. I can't bring laundry up or down the stairs. Just walking up the stairs by myself causes my oxygen to drop significantly and my heart to race. If I have a good day and I am on my feet a lot, I start to have foot and leg pain, which is a common side effect of this IV medication. On those days, even when I feel great, I'm forced often to sit down so that my feet are up and the pressure is taken off of them. Weather plays a significant role in my life. It was and still always is difficult to breathe in the cold and humid air. On windy days, I can't catch my breath. This past winter, for weeks at a time, I was stuck inside due to the snow and temperatures of below 32 in the Philadelphia region, and it's difficult to breathe. On bad days, I take a shower and I feel like I need to rest following that. I don't accomplish much at all. I'll wake up, eat, and go back to sleep until my children come home from school. Other bad days are caused by my heart giving off sharp pangs, which scare me, and so I lay down, no matter how I am feeling. My conditions changed over time. I talked about some of this, and other than pre-pulmonary hypertension, I was very healthy. I had tremendous stamina. I could fly to the West Coast for a work engagement, have lunch, dinner, fly home on a red eye, and be in the office the next morning at 8 a.m. Since pulmonary hypertension, I become very sick each winter for a matter of weeks or months with bronchitis and pneumonia. The fevers last for weeks or months on end. Initially, after diagnosis, I still was able to work. I worked through some of my progression onto IV therapy, but as time passed, I became too tired to get dressed in a business suit and to go into the office. My company modified my position to give me flexibility. But at 41, my fatigue had increased to the point where I had to stop working altogether, to rest in the afternoons, or I have a difficult time making it through the rest of the day. The things that didn't even register as tasks pre-pulmonary hypertension serve as accomplishments for me now, like going to the grocery store or shopping for my children. I am very thankful to rely on the internet for a lot of non-perishable shopping. And they were the remarks that I prepared.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Alex?
Hi, my name is Alex. I was diagnosed with... Hi, my name is Alex. I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension on September 6th of 1998. I suffered with symptoms more than 2 years prior to my diagnosis. My daughter recently told me how much it impacted her life for me not to be able to pick her up. I would tell her she was too heavy for me, and she took it as she was fat. And if she lost weight, I'd be able to pick her up more often. She also told me not being able to pick her up impacted her because she felt like I didn't love her or her sisters enough. I did cuddle with them as often as I could, but picking them up was so important to them. I really don't understand it, but that's how they felt. Now with my granddaughter weighing nearly 40 pounds, I'm having such a hard time picking her up. I could barely pick her up when she was just a few months old and 10 pounds and walk around with her in my arms. I can't carry her to bed if she falls asleep watching TV or playing. I can't lift her to wash her hands in the bathroom or to reach something if she wants to get. She's at a stage now where everything is, "Don't help me, Nana, I can do it." But if she wants to reach something that she can't, picking her up is out of the question. But if I do, for whatever reason, I get very short of breath and I even get chest pains. A couple of nights ago, we took a walk to the park. She wanted to play on the swings, and of course that meant picking her up and putting her in the toddler swing. That was very difficult. We couldn't stay very long after that. Before that, we played on the seesaw, and I got short of breath on that as well. It was almost like running a marathon. I was so short of breath. Walking up hills causes me to get short of breath. I don't normally stop what I'm doing when I'm SOB, because as soon as I start again, I'm once again short of breath. So I usually just keep going. If it's really bad, I'll stop, and if I get palpitations, I'll stop. I was on Flolan for the first 4 years of my diagnosis, and because of that, I developed photosensitivity. I cannot walk outside without sunglasses on, even in a cloudy day. Exhaustion is another symptom that drastically impacts my life. Before I was diagnosed 15 years ago, I slept 18 to 20 hours a day. I would wake up in the morning, make breakfast for my kids, put them in front of the television, and fall asleep on the couch. At noon, I would get up and make lunch, send my little ones out to play with their friends, and fall asleep on the couch. I'd wake up with just enough time to make a quick dinner, wait for their father, my ex-husband, to come from work. I'd meet him at the door with all 3 girls and say, "I am exhausted," and go off and sleep for the rest of the night. Even still, 15 years later, exhaustion plagues me. I can sleep sometimes until 11 in the morning after having a full night's sleep, and still need to take a 2-hour nap from 2 to 4. Nowadays, napping is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And if I don't get a nap for whatever reason, even if I'm sitting watching my granddaughter as she watches television, I have zero energy for anything other than sitting. Another symptom that affects my life negatively is raising my arms in the air above my head, washing my hair, reaching for a cup in the cupboard, brushing my hair. These things make me very tired. I only wash my hair once or twice a week depending on how I feel. Emptying out the dishwasher is very difficult. Putting cups and plates Away makes me tired. I have to do these things in sections. For example, doing the dishes. I empty the dishwasher and sit and rest. Rinse the dishes, sit and rest. Load the dishwasher, sit and rest. The same goes with vacuuming. Pick up stuff off the floor, vacuum the dining room, vacuum the living room, vacuum the hallway, vacuum my bedroom. On good days, I can put a couple of these steps together and not have to rest as often. And on bad days, I have to break it up even further. Things I cannot fully do as I'd like to because of pulmonary arterial hypertension are things that include bending and standing. Picking things up off the floor makes me dizzy, and most often I get short of breath. Before I was diagnosed, I passed out when I would bend over. When my children were babies, my youngest daughter was 2 years old when I was diagnosed. It was even worse. Picking them up, cooking for them, cleaning after them, these things would make me so short of breath, I'd get palpitations and I would pass out. I passed out more than 30 times in a 3-month period and was told it was just in my head. I'm very afraid of taking my granddaughter out in public because I won't be able to run after her if she takes off. Watching her nearly full time is very difficult. I get exhausted after just a few short hours. She's so full of energy. I would love to become a productive member of society again, going back to work, not having to rely on family and friends to support me, being able to work a 40-hour work week, not having to rely on food stamps, Medicare, and Medicaid would be wonderful. My new normal is a lot slower than before, a lot calmer than before, and a lot quieter than before, but thank God I have a new normal to live. Thank you.
Alex, thank you for that. Kevin?
Yes, I'm Kevin Paskowich, and at first glance, I may look like a mostly healthy 32-year-old man. Unfortunately, that is not the case. The symptoms I deal with most frequently are the greatly reduced energy levels that I have to schedule my life around. Pardon? Have to deal with the greatly reduced energy levels that I have to schedule my life around, and the shortness of breath that can bring my daily activities to a screeching halt. In short, my daily life is rationed. I have to make decisions based on how I feel every morning, look at my schedule, and decide what I can or cannot do. A busy day today might mean a day of recovery tomorrow to recover my energy level. My energy level is less than half of what it was 5 years ago. After I look at my day, I have to account for what activities could be potentially taxing, what could lead me to a bout of shortness of breath. Watching my children can become an issue, as well as helping my wife with simple tasks around the house. Finally, I must add time to my daily tasks, as lapses in concentration make it much harder to complete certain jobs than once I was able to. Fortunately, PAH has not just cost me the joys of a schedule-free day. It has cost me many of my favorite activities as well. Being able to take my kids to mini golf, being able to go on walks and hikes with my wife. Those are all very limited now and have to be scheduled accordingly. From my early teens to my late 20s, I was an active hockey player, a competitive rower, a kayaker, a biker, and a hiker. Any excuse to get out on the water or into the woods, I would take. The loss of these activities has been perhaps one of the hardest parts. Where once I could strap on the pads and play a game, now I can only watch. Where once I could kayak several miles with friends or canoe with my wife, now getting in the water is hard enough. Taking my kids to a game, being able to play with my stepson or my daughter in the backyard, now I have to watch. Where once I enjoyed long hiking excursions in the mountains of Appalachia, now a walk downtown with my wife, if I schedule my day properly, is the best I can do. But for me, things have improved. When I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension in August 2012, my condition was such that getting up and moving from one room of my house to another, as an example, moving from my living room to my kitchen, a distance of 20 feet, could be taxing. Even the simple act of leaving my home and walking to my car, a 50-yard journey that required me to traverse one flight of steps, had to be planned out. But in September 2012, I started medication, and my symptoms and conditions slowly started to improve. On a 3-drug cocktail, Adcirca, Tracleer, and Tyvaso, I've been able to take back small parts of my life. My walk distances have improved, and where once walking up the front steps to my home would result in shortness of breath or lightheadedness, now I can manage a very light workout, a walk around town with my wife. Where once I had enough energy to make it to maybe one appointment a day if I was lucky, with proper scheduling, I can make it to several. I'm fairly certain that I speak for patients, some patients, and that I hope that we'll be able to look back at these proceedings one day and say that this was the beginning of the end for our journey for PAH. That somehow us sharing with you today our struggles as patients will empower the FDA to work closer with our community of patients, caregivers, and researchers so that we can look forward to the day that this disease is either completely in the past or that a newly diagnosed patient will have no fear of what is to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Holly?
Hi, my name's Holly Tissue Thompson, and I was diagnosed with PAH in June of 2008. I'm the mother of 2 children. They are both boys. At the time, they were 3 and 7. I was in the midst of potty training my youngest son and was diagnosed with this disease and was told, oh, you can't pick anything up over 15 pounds. And I was like, my son's 20 pounds and I have to put him on the potty. Well, you're going to have to figure something else out. So as it was Alex said, I had to figure out a new normal and a new way of doing things. And I've done very well at doing that since being placed on medications. I am on IV Remodulin and Tracleer, as well as I was placed in a study for the drug imatinib a few years ago. That drug was not approved, but I have been approved by my insurance to use it off-label. After starting this drug, I saw an amazing improvement in my health and decided it was worth the risks to continue on that medication. The 3 symptoms that I most significantly impact my life are the fatigue, the shortness of breath, of course, and I also have a weird bloaty feeling in my belly all the time. My fluid levels are well controlled. I am not overly hydrated or dehydrated. The doctor said it's just a matter of backing up blood into my liver, things like that. Sometimes there is some extra fluid there. And just going out to dinner with my family is sometimes not an enjoyable experience because just eating and getting that full feeling in your belly makes it hard to breathe. I've continued to work as a pharmacist 24 to 32 hours a week. It's very difficult to stand the 8 to 10 hour days. I often sleep after putting my children on the bus if it's a day off, almost the entire time they're at school, and then I get up, get them off the bus, get dinner, and get them to their activities. So we lead a rather busy life, but it's something I prefer to continue to do due to the fact that I spent, excuse me, a lot of time and energy to get my degree. Other things that bother me is obviously the shortness of breath. Just doing things with my children that I'd like to do, walking our dogs, going to the park, whatever activities they want to do, that's what I would like to be doing with them. We live in a 2-story house with a basement, so stairs are always an issue. I typically will leave piles at the bottom of the steps and at the top of the steps of things for my husband or my boys to bring up or down when they get home. Losing this independence is a difficult thing to deal with, but after 6 years, I've wrapped my head around it. Laundry is an issue. Stooping down to get things out of the dryer, put things in the dryer. Any of that, lifting the laundry baskets to take them to the living room to fold, is also something that you deal with every day, and you wonder if that's ever going to get better. As I've said, the medications that I'm on have helped immensely with that, and with the shortness of breath, I'm much better today than I was 6 years ago. But it would be great to not have to have the IV line in your chest and be concerned about the kinking of your line, possibly your line slipping out, taking a shower with having your pump hanging outside and trying to twist around without getting tangled up. We have, as I mentioned, we have 2 dogs. We got them as puppies about 6 months before I was diagnosed. So again, when I was told, you need to slow down, you can't be walking as much when I was first diagnosed, that was a very difficult thing to wrap my head around. My husband and I had bought bicycles and a cart to pull our children in right before I'd gotten severe symptoms. I wish I could have logged many more hours with him and our boys. When I was first diagnosed, I experienced extreme pain and cramping in my legs, even when I would walk my son the short distance down our driveway to the bus. The Remodulin, as I said, has controlled my pH symptoms as well as the Triclear, and my 6-minute walk test has improved. About 2 years after my diagnosis, my disease had progressed and I was put on the lung transplant list. But at that same time was when my doctor mentioned the trial of the imatinib drug, and I decided to give that a try, and amazingly enough, I have improved enough that I am just waiting to put the transplant on hold. Life with PH is a roller coaster of ups and downs. Some days are good, some days are bad. There's always that week or two that you think everything is going smoothly, and then suddenly you find out it's not. Your Q site that you attach your medicine to, your IV catheter, might get a crack in it and you didn't realize it. Later you have a spot of blood on your shirt and you're panicked at work. What's going on? And you have to go and remix your medicine. Just remixing and reconnecting doesn't make the problem go away. You then have to deal with the flushing, the headache, and all of that all over again. I've occasionally had problems with my line cracking, or it even slipped out once. So I had to make an emergency trip to the emergency room and stay a few days to get a line replaced. So PH, although we have a new normal, is a ride of up and down that we have to take our family on.
Holly, thank you. Nicole?
My name is Nicole Matthews. I'm 35 years old, and I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension in 2012. It was the end of Heart Disease Awareness Month, and I remember that because there had been so much discussion that month about the different symptoms, and I woke up at about 1 o'clock in the morning with severe chest pain and heart palpitations. And at first I tried to rationalize it, thinking I'm 30, I'm healthy, or relatively healthy. I shouldn't be a candidate for a heart attack. But I'd had a classmate from high school pass away from a heart attack a month before, so I thought I should go to the emergency room. After a few tests and several hours, the emergency room doctor came to me and said I wasn't having a heart attack, But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, he said, "You do have pulmonary hypertension, and we can't let you go home, but we're going to have someone come and talk to you about life going forward." I remember the phrase life going forward because it just seemed so final. And after doing some research and talking to the doctors on the staff, I understood why. I went through a battery of more tests and finally got transferred to a specialist who performed a right heart catheterization to confirm the diagnosis. During the first year after my diagnosis, I often dealt with extreme fatigue, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, and dizziness, and the same chest pain that sent me to the emergency room in the first place. The fatigue started with me just being groggier in the morning, but it progressed to me falling asleep at my desk at work. I've fallen asleep at a stoplight, and I've fallen asleep in the driveway waiting for the garage to lift up. I do have more energy today with the medication I'm on, but on the weekends I still need a minimum of about 12 hours of sleep. The remaining symptoms that arose for me with even small amounts of physical activity were dizziness, lightheadedness. I've fainted multiple times. And just as an example, before pulmonary hypertension, I was very active. I have lupus and have had it for a while, but it has been under control with the use of medication for several years. I exercised regularly. I would walk our dogs in the park. My husband and I would go hiking and that kind of thing. And we had planned, for children. Pulmonary hypertension stopped all of that. Walking around the grocery store or walking from the parking lot to my office became a major task. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. Excuse me. My heart would flutter or I would get lightheaded just walking the aisles of the grocery store. I would have to stop for frequent rests because I would pass out if I didn't. Sleeping at night, I would have to sit up, and if I laid down, I would feel pressure on my chest as if I couldn't breathe, and that made sleeping difficult because you're scared that you're going to pass away in your sleep. I would have trouble talking for presentations, and I didn't say my career in the beginning. I'm an attorney, so I have to stand up in court a lot. I have to make arguments and that kind of thing, and it's really a high-pressure job. So the thought of not being able to give an opening argument or to be able to present an argument on behalf of a client effectively was horrible to me after all the work that I had put in for school to get my degree. On more severe days, any amount of walking would lead to chest pain and dizziness. There were times when walking from the parking lot to my office that I would have to stop and rest in the parking garage for fear that I would pass out and no one would be able to find me. The symptoms were made worse if I tried to climb the stairs, and we actually live in a 3-level townhouse, and so there were often times where I would just sleep in the living room instead of making it up to bed. I'm lucky that I have a job that understands my symptoms and has been really understanding about letting me work from home when I need to. But if I have a meeting and I need to go in, I always have to have oxygen available. So I keep a tank in my office, a tank in my car, and obviously multiple tanks and a concentrator at home. The ability to travel for my job is greatly diminished because I can't fly without an oxygen concentrator, which adds on pretty much another person traveling with you because you have to pay for rental of the concentrator if you don't own one. You have to get all of these clearances through security at the airport, which, as I'm sure all of you can relate, is already difficult enough. And it becomes a severe process, which means I elect not to fly when I don't have to, taking away some of the conferences and travel opportunities I would have for my job. But at least I am lucky enough to have the energy to still be working. It's clear that my life totally changed after I developed pulmonary hypertension. Exercising, playing with our dog in the park, hiking with my husband were all eliminated for a while. And the fatigue caused by my symptoms and the physical issues that I developed left me without energy or ability, actually, to keep up. Today, however, I'm a little over 2 years from my diagnosis, and I've gotten the right medical cocktail down with the help of a great medical team back home in New York. I take sildenafil, I take Tracleer, and I do an inhaled prostacyclin called Ventavis. I do 6 to 9 treatments a day. With those medications, if I compare this year to the year I was diagnosed, I can say that my symptoms are minimal. There are still moments where I'm short of breath or have chest pain, but it occurs mostly with intense exercise. I'm able now to walk on the treadmill and do Zumba classes, whereas 2 years ago, I wasn't able to walk the 50 feet from my car to the elevator at my building, or even up the stairs from my living room to my bedroom. There are still days where my oxygen levels are very low, and I feel short of breath and lightheaded just walking around the house or trying to do normal household chores. I do have an oxygen concentrator in my home for those days, and if I'm mobile, I will use my portable oxygen. Today, because of the medication, and I feel keeping my faith first, I can say that I feel pretty normal. But like everyone else on the panel has said, it's a brand new normal. There are things that we have to consider that our friends don't have to consider. You know, you'll have friends who call and say, oh, let's go out for cocktails, or friends who say, oh, let's plan a trip and go away. And those are things that I did easily before, and now it's a big planning process, or it's just a no because I physically can't do it. That's it.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It takes a lot of courage to come and share such personal stories with a large group, so I want to can we all give our panel a round of applause? Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you to all of you for coming and sharing those experiences with us. So before I move on, if you're comfortable to do so, can we do a show of hands and see how many of you heard your own experience shared by one of our panelists, at least one of our panelists? Looks like many of you did. And I saw a lot of heads nodding as our panelists were speaking, so we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So before we move on to our polling question, also, we do have one polling question to sort of kick off our group discussion. There's a lot of interesting points that came up, and I'm curious to see how many of you also share that. So we heard that weather can impact your symptoms. By a show of hands, how many of you agree that weather has impacted your symptoms? Okay. And we also heard photosensitivity. By a show of hands, anybody else share that experience? Okay. All right. Well, we'll be hearing from you in just a moment, but let's do our next polling question. Okay, so everybody have your clickers? All right. So of all the symptoms you have experienced, oh, do you not have your, you can stay here. Do you have your clickers or no? Oh, okay. We'll get you some. No, it's okay. Do you have your clicker? Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so of all of the symptoms you have experienced because of pulmonary arterial hypertension, which do you consider to have the most significant impact on your daily life? And you can choose up to 3. A, pain such as chest pain. B, shortness of breath, wheezing, or other breathing difficulties. C, dizziness, fainting, or lightheadedness. D, fatigue. E, swelling, such as swollen ankles or legs. And F, other symptoms not mentioned. If you can all enter your... Okay. Okay, so here are the results, and I believe that our panelists shared many of these symptoms also. So the one that came up the most was B, shortness of breath, wheezing, or other breathing difficulties. So 87% of you said this is the most significant symptom. We also have D, fatigue, followed by, it looks like C and E, so dizziness, fainting, or lightheadedness, and swelling, such as swollen ankles or legs. And we did have a little bit of pain, such as chest pain, and other symptoms not mentioned. So I would like to check in, towards the end of this dialogue, maybe we can check in and see what are some of those other symptoms that haven't been mentioned. And we'll get to the fatigue in just a moment, but does anybody want to share? Oh, let's check in with the web. Thank you. Yeah, let's check in with the web.
Hello. So on the web, it seems like fatigue and shortness of breath are the main two top symptoms, followed by dizziness, fainting, or lightheadedness. We do have several who've mentioned other symptoms. So there are people on the web as well who've said that there are other symptoms that they experience. So we can get to that later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right. So let's spend just a few more moments on the shortness of breath. So does anybody want to start our conversation today and tell us how you experience shortness of breath? Do you experience it differently from what you've heard from our panel? Anybody want to share your experience? Oh, yes, we have a...
My name is Deborah Issa. Mainly when I climb hills, it really has not, not stairs, but just flat going up the hill. It makes me have a lot of chest pain, and I'll be, going even with oxygen on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Deborah. Yes?
Thank you. My name is Kathleen Harrington. It impacts me. I'm always feeling like there's a tightness in my chest and that I can't get enough air. And I've definitely had to, alter my activity level. But I can think, the hardest thing right now is that I have a almost 4-year-old son, and I read to him every night, and I have to pick books that don't have long sentences, or it has to be, a lot of pictures, a lot of 1 or 2 sentences at a time. Otherwise, I tell Dad he has to read. But that's my son's always saying, no, I want Mommy to read, and so that's really hard to not be able to read a book to my son.
Thank you, Catherine. In the back.
Hi, my name is Nancy Maxwell. If I keep to my own slow pace, I can walk a good distance without really feeling a lot of shortness of breath, but almost immediately within bending or twisting, I'll feel shortness of breath. Loading and unloading the dishwasher, I heard people mention that. Doing laundry, anything that takes lateral movement, I feel shortness of breath extremely quickly. So I just wanted to
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else? So we've heard from the panel, and also I just heard you say, Nancy, that you have to sort of pace your day and plan your day. Does anybody want to share their experience with how that helps the shortness of breath symptom, or how does that impact what an average day with shortness of breath is like, if you're able to sort of plan out your day and pace what you're doing? Or maybe you can share with us, what does that average day look like experiencing shortness of breath versus a more severe day?
I experience shortness of breath when I exert myself. So on a daily basis, I have to decide, okay, today I can't go to the supermarket today and do the laundry at the same time. I have to make a list of non-exerting stuff and stuff that are exerting. So I have to make a decision, a conscious decision, and say, okay, today I will do these 5 things, and 2 of the 5 must be things that, that I have to exert myself with. So I can't just get up in the morning and say, okay, I have the laundry to do, the dishes to do, I have to go to the supermarket. No. I have to make a conscious decision. Today I'm going to do the laundry. Supermarket I have to stay till tomorrow, even if there's no food in the house. That's that thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Oh, my name is Marcia Brown.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Tammy, right here.
My name is Tammy Pixler, and basically every day that I wake up, I live at a 3-story townhouse, and I live by myself. So every morning when I wake up, I determine what I need to do because I need to minimize going up and down the steps. So if I have outside appointments, that means I stay in my room, I get dressed, I get showered, I do everything that I need to do upstairs before going downstairs to let the dog out, to make my coffee, and to take on the rest of my day. If I'm not going out, that means I can just get up and go down and get my coffee right away. So it is all about chopping up your day and trying to figure out what you can do. Things take longer because, cooking, you really have to take into consideration how you're going to have to plan things because it does take longer because you have to chop up the vegetables and then sit back and take a break and, do another piece. I do laundry by carrying it step by step up the stairs because I can't do it, and I just move it around from level to level. When people come over, I'm like, hey, can you get that laundry upstairs or downstairs? I take advantage of people when they come over. And then I also do laundry or grocery deliveries and stuff like that. But it really is, your whole perspective of things that you used to take for granted, it is amazing. And yeah, bending over, my goodness, bending over is not a good thing. So I understand all this stuff as well.
Thank you, Tammy. I saw a lot of heads nodding. Sounds like it's a similar experience, a shared experience. Yes, another comment here?
My name is Blanche Hamilton. I can walk about 1 mile on a treadmill indoors without any problem. I can barely walk a block outside. It's a lot more difficult to walk in air, no matter the outside. No matter whether it's warm or cold, whatever, it's just very difficult.
It's very interesting. Let's do a show of hands here. Does anybody share that experience that being outside versus inside, being outside is more difficult with breathing? Okay, good to know. Oh, Tammy, hang on. Let's get you a microphone.
No, I'm the same way. If I am outside and I'm on oxygen, but it is much harder for me to get around or get down a aisle at the grocery store because I'll put my oxygen in the cart and push it, but it still takes forever. But at home, I can do the same thing. I can get on the treadmill. I have to crank up the oxygen really high, but I can, I can go on the treadmill for like 20 minutes. Very easily and not be too terribly short of breath. So I understand what you're saying.
Okay. We'll take one more comment and then we can check in with the web also.
Thank you. For me, the weather has become a major issue. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and it's so hot and humid here in the summers. I was a school counselor for the past 15 years until last week disability was approved, sadly. But in the summers, I've been spending as much time with friends and family in the Northeast as possible because I can just breathe when I'm there. If I'm at home, I'm completely homebound all summer. And as you can imagine, with a small child, that's not fair to either one of us. So definitely weather, hot, humid, makes it very hard to breathe.
Okay, thank you. Let me check in with the FDA panel. Did you have any follow-up questions regarding this particular symptom? Okay. Can we see what's coming in on the web?
Yeah, so we have a a lot of similar comments from people talking about shortness of breath, fatigue, exhaustion, mentioning that activity outside is more difficult than inside. We also had several people mention weather sensitivity and light and heat sensitivity, and one person also put a lot of emphasis on irregular heartbeats, usually from exertion, but sometimes just spontaneously.
Okay, thank you, Graham. So I think this is a good lead-in for the next symptom that came up in the polling, which was fatigue, one of the most significant symptoms being fatigue. So we've heard exhaustion now, we've heard from the panel also their severe days of exhaustion and so forth. So does anybody want to share their experience with the fatigue? Yes.
Hi, my name's Debbie Williams, and I just want to say you get tired doing anything that requires oxygen, and that's like 95% of everything that you do. Thinking takes oxygen. Talking takes oxygen. I had a friend come over to help organize my house so it was much more convenient for me a few weeks ago, and Sherry did all the work. I just sat in a chair and told her, you know, save this, put this in front, put that in back, things like that. She picked everything up, she moved everything. I just went around from room to room, sat in a chair and told her what to do. But I had to think about what we were doing. I had to tell her what to do. Sherry left at 5 o'clock, and I decided I needed to rest a little bit before I started supper. I went in and laid down around 5:30. I woke up at 8 the next morning. Just talking, just thinking all day. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, I saw heads nodding. So let me ask you a follow-up question with the fatigue. Is it the type of fatigue where you, and I feel like we've heard a little bit of both, is it the type of fatigue where you need to pretty much sleep to, you know, to overcome that? Or is it the type of fatigue where you need to maybe take more rest? Is there a way to tease that out, or is it both? Does anybody want to speak to that? Oh, we have a hand back there.
My name is Berdine Brown. The fatigue for me, I don't do a lot of sleeping, but I do need to rest. For instance, it can take me like 4 hours to just clean up my living room or something, or almost all day to do one room. But then when I finish, if I sit down, I don't really have to sleep. As a matter of fact, I don't do a lot of sleeping. But some days, you know, my pH really doesn't hinder me a lot. At least I don't let it. So I'm very active, and I could be gone for days, you know, just go day after day after day, and then I'll realize that I'm really tired, and then one day I'll sleep all day. But as a rule, I can go all day, and I'm good.
Thank you, Brittany. Anybody else? Yes, we have.
Yes, my name is Joanna from Connecticut, and I've had it over 20 years. And I found, just recently, I had a sleep study test, and it really made a lot of difference now that I have the mask, because I find I'm not as tired in the morning. I get up, I'm not yawning, and I do still tend to have a little downtime in the afternoon, like between 3, 4, 5 o'clock. I have to rest, then I'm okay. But like that other lady said, I don't really require a lot of rest, or maybe I fight it, I don't know. But I'm always on the go also, and the fatigue is there, but I find the shortness of breath is more difficult.
Thank you. Yes, we have somebody.
Hi, my name is Nicole Cooper, and I want to comment about fatigue. I think with some people think that fatigue is you exert yourself when you're doing something. With pH, you can sit in the chair for 5 hours and do nothing and get up and feel like you have ran back and forth in this room for 30 minutes. And you absolutely could just sit and do nothing.
I see a lot of heads nodding. Nicole, I think that sounds like it resonates with a lot of people. Does anybody else want to talk about how they experience fatigue? Anyone on the, yes, Holly.
As I stated, I'm a pharmacist, so I work many hours on my feet, which causes the chest pain and the fatigue. Luckily, my work is nice enough that I can never work 3 days in a row. 2 days I can do, 3 days is impossible. But after that 2 days, I'm done for the next day at least. Typically that next day after, I am still resting. And I tell the girls at work, I don't think it's the fatigue that I felt before I was sick. It's a different fatigue. I don't know how to describe it, but there is a pH tired and there is a I'm tired. And it's just a totally different feeling.
Yes, Alex. Thank you, Holly.
I get both the I need to sleep as well as I need to just sit and rest. And when I need to sleep, it's like an all of a sudden crash where it's like I'm doing well, and bam, I need to go to sleep. That happens frequently to me. Also, taking showers is very exhausting, and on really, really bad days, I have a shower chair. And walking, like I said before, I have a wheelchair, a companion chair that like going to the zoo or whatever, that I use as well. That's,
Thank you, Alex. Does that sound like it's a similar experience? Yes? Holly brought up a point that I want to expand on just a bit. You talked about experiencing this particular symptom, fatigue, before pH and after, sort of how it used to be before you were diagnosed versus what it is after pH. Can somebody talk to us about how your symptoms have changed over time? So how did you experience the symptom maybe early on in the diagnosis versus later on? Okay, we have a few. Okay, let's start there.
Hi, my name is Stacy Doyle. I've had PH for 7 years now. In the beginning, I used to use Ventavis and Triclair, so I could pretty much do anything with with stopping and resting. I was still very active. I still work full time. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I was able to go on vacation and swim. I could even snorkel. And about a year ago, I got progressively worse. And I'm now on a Remodulin sub-Q pump. And that has helped me in terms of my heart and being able to do things. But the side effects of the medication has limited me more in some ways than the condition itself, I feel. So I'm at a dilemma in terms of what I'm able to do. I still work full time, as I said. I'm trying to push through this and wait for the next level of drugs to come out to help me become normal again so that I can do the things I used to be able to do, if that's even possible. So I do things on the weeks when I don't have the pain. I walk. I still try to go out dancing with my family and my sisters, but then I pay for it the next day, as you said, with fatigue and having to sleep and recover. So it does limit what you're able to do over time. But I have hope that some of the medications will enable us to get more of our activities back on track, and we can do things that we used to be able to do, if that's possible.
Thank you for sharing that. And we had someone here?
Hello, my name is Rosalind Fraser. I was diagnosed 12 years ago with PH, and I started off exactly where these patients are talking about, taking 2 hours to shower, to get from the shower to the bed, from the shower to the toilet to sit, and then to just get to the bed and feel like I've done it all. My son was 8 at the time, And I remember not being able to walk up a flight of stairs or to, I was a dance instructor when I first got diagnosed. So, and I kind of thought, hey, what's wrong? Because I was teaching dance, and then the next, probably the next day or week, I was unable to walk upstairs or anything like that. And then they diagnosed me with PH. And I remember my doctor saying to me on a scale of 1 to 10, I was probably at a 9 at needing a lung transplant. 12 years later, I can do a full class of Zumba and then go on the treadmill, do the elliptical. I work full time as a social worker. I'm no longer in the field, but I did field work just last year, and I have a very busy schedule. I had stopped dancing and just directed and choreographed, but now I dance again with my dance ministry, and I do also like a hand dance, not kicking and all that, but I can do like hand dance for 45, 50 minutes for our routines. So my life has totally gone back to normal. The only thing that I can't do is swim because you can't get the pump wet. But otherwise to that, I feel like I live a totally normal life. So I just want to encourage everybody that 12 years later, you can feel 100% normal. Outside of just having the pump, people don't even know that I have anything wrong with me because I'm even more active than some people, a lot of people that I'm with who are just normal. So you can eventually become feeling just completely normal.
Rosalind, thank you for sharing that. So to recap, it sounds like we're hearing both sides. We're hearing that with time, some of the symptoms are getting are progressing and becoming worse, and Rosalind has had the opposite experience in some aspects of the symptoms and so forth.
Initially, I started off on Flolan, and now I am on Veletri, which is still the infusion drug, and I am on Adcirca. I was initially on Revadio, which was Viagra, but I'm not on that anymore. And I'm on Letairis, and I know my doctors are thinking about the oral Remodulin. So right now I'm on 2 oral meds and the infusion pump.
Thank you, Rosalind. Anybody else want to share their experience with how their symptoms have changed over time? Yes, Alex.
So like I said before, I passed out 30 times in a 3-month period before I was on Flolan. And I can pretty much walk as far as I inside, like I said, and then also the different things that I can do now that I couldn't do before that would make me pass out, that would make me dizzy and that sort of thing. I can do those things now again. And I'm not at 100%, definitely not. I would probably say I'm at 70 from before, but definitely things are getting better. But at the same time, I can also feel myself declining a little bit. My 6-minute walk has dramatically increased. I just did one a couple weeks, well, last week I guess it was, and I increased more than 100 feet. So it definitely has been better.
Thank you, Alex. Now, I remember that one of the other symptoms that came up was pain, such as chest pain. And on that note, we've also heard that pain can manifest itself as chest pain. We heard leg pain. Does anybody want to share their experience with how you're experiencing the pain? Is it similar, or is there a different pain that you're experiencing? Did I see a hand back there? Okay. Let me ask you a follow-up question. Is there a particular symptom that can make another symptom worse? Yes, okay. Do you want to share that experience with us? Where did I hear? Oh.
Hi, my name is Patricia Feeney, and I'm from Connecticut. I have pulmonary artery hypertension for 4 years. Now, the pain that I experienced was the fact that I had a heart attack and triple bypassed. And then a year after, when I was still feeling heaviness in my chest and pain, my cardiologist sent me to a great lung specialist. They did try me on several inhalers. They at first thought I had asthma, your typical symptoms, asthma, emphysema. So I went through a lot of different type of inhalers before they actually sent me to a specialist in pulmonary artery hypertension. And he tested me. I did walk tests. I had every kind of test you can possibly think of. And that's when they found out the chest pain I was experiencing was actually from the shortness of breath, the tightness in my chest. I feel it more with weather change, so I can relate to everything they're saying. Many go along without having or experiencing having a heart attack and having a triple bypass. So it's very hard to distinguish between the two. The tightness, the heaviness, the shortness of breath. But thankfully they resolved it. And I see my doctors on a regular schedule. And I am on Remodulin, which is, and I have an IV in my chest, and it's probably the greatest thing that has happened to me. I was a hairdresser for 44 years. Unfortunately, the one thing I loved the most in my life, I had to give up. But I thank God because they solved the problem. It wasn't, I blamed the chemicals, ladies, having my hair done and doing other people's hair. But it's not the chemicals, and I realize it now. It took a long time for me to accept it. And acceptance is part of your healing process.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So let's do a quick show of hands before I go on to the FDA panel, and we'll check in with the telephone in just a moment. We talked about pain, chest pain, tightness in the chest. By a show of hands, how many of you can relate to that, feeling of the tightness in the chest? And okay. Okay, great. Any follow-up questions? Yes, Ellis.
Maybe we could do this with a show of hands, but I'd be interested in seeing a show of hands for an answer to this question, multiple choice. If a drug could fix one of your symptoms, which would you pick? And I think the answers would be shortness of breath, fatigue, and chest pain. And I'd like to see a show of hands.
Okay, great question. So let's start with the shortness of breath. Would you want to address that as the main symptom that a drug could fix? Okay, see a lot of hands there and here too. How about fatigue? Okay. You can raise your hand for both if you'd like, if it's and the third one was chest pain. Okay, this is interesting to see.
Yeah, I saw about 18 hands for shortness of breath and about 9 for fatigue, and none for. I didn't see any for chest pain.
Yes.
Seem right?
Yes,
about half as many.
Yep, I didn't see any for chest pain either. Yes, Teresa.
So Jania, can we ask that question of the people on the webcast? I don't know if you can, but can you?
Yes, definitely. Is there a way to sort of type that out or get there?
We have gotten some responses. So they have mentioned shortness of breath, fatigue, and chest pain on the webcast. So we can't get an approximate number, but about a handful have responded to each.
Okay. All right, good to know. Okay, and I just want to take a minute. We did see some other symptoms not mentioned come up in the polling. Does anybody want to share a symptom that they're experiencing that we haven't talked about yet? Yes.
Hi, my name is Lynn Levine.
I was diagnosed about 3 years ago with PAH. I don't know if this falls into a symptom, but ever since I've had the PAH, I tend to get a cough that turns into a cold, that turns into bronchitis. And I've been fortunate. I haven't actually gone all the way to pneumonia, though I've had at least twice when my pulmonologist did chest x-rays because they thought I was that far along. For me, it happens, it doesn't need, it's not a specific season. I can get a winter cold, I can get a summer cold. But normally before PAH, I would get a cold, it would, take a few days, it would be over. This becomes a 4 to 6 week experience, sometimes with an enormous amount of coughing for many of those weeks. So I definitely associate that with PAH, and I want to bring it up. I think somebody mentioned something about bronchitis, perhaps, but for me, it's a very significant event that repeats itself, 3-4 times a year now.
Thank you. So it sounds like, from what I understand, a higher frequency of colds and bronchitis, and they last longer too, those episodes. Do others share that experience? Yes, Alex.
So we're a family of singers. We sing constantly. And when I was first diagnosed, before I was diagnosed, and then even on Flowland, I lost my voice. I could barely talk. I was hoarse like crazy, but I could not sing at all. And it was during Christmas, and that made me very depressed that I couldn't sing at Christmas. But changing of the voice was something that was very difficult to deal with for me.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, Colleen.
Yeah, typically, I never had a chest cold in my life until I had pulmonary hypertension. And then when I get them, I usually get a fever. It turns into bronchitis. They treat me then and there for pneumonia because it typically turns into pneumonia, sometimes even with the medicines that they give me. Several times they've wanted to hospitalize me, but they hesitate to do that because my local hospital is not authorized to deal with the prescriptions that I'm currently taking, the IV medications. They don't have the facilities to mix it or administer it to me. And our greatest fear is that I'll catch another infection on top of all of the infections that I currently have at that time. So we, in the end, always decide to treat me at home as if I'm in the hospital, and the doctor staff calls me daily to make sure that I'm progressing in the right way. But it's very scary when you need to sleep sitting up because you can't lay down at all, and you have trouble walking a couple of feet because even the shortest or most shallow breath causes a coughing fit that you can't recover from, and you know that you're blue and you start to feel anxious. And so it's scary to be in that position when it does happen, and it seems like it's unavoidable. So we try very carefully to, in my house I have soap dispensers that give me soap and separate hand towels because I have 2 young children in 2 different schools. So my thought is I'm dealing with at least 1,000 germs every day coming into the house. So we try to go out of our way because it is so scary to my kids to see me not be able to talk or move, or to, if I breathe just more than the most shallow breath, going into a coughing fit that I can't recover from, and they don't even want to be there. They're scared. So it's all of those things that come into it too, and that is all directly related to my pH.
Okay. Thank you. So it sounds like coughing is let me do one thing. Let me check in with the phone. We are a little bit short on time, so let me check in and see if we can bring some callers in.
Yes, we do have a question.
Okay.
Your line is open. Hi, it wasn't so much of a question as an additional experience. So in my case, 5 years ago, I weighed 500 pounds. I thought I was obese. I was preparing to do a gastric bypass surgery, and it turned out that I was swollen, not fat, once they cut me open. So I was eventually diagnosed with severe hospital where they knew how to treat me, and I was hooked up immediately with IV Remodulin with a little pump that I wear in my back pocket, and it turned my life around because I lost 300 pounds of fluid in 1 year. The first 100 pounds I peed in the first month in the cardiac ICU. So when I talk about swelling, I talk about that kind of swelling. It's severe swelling. So, we were talking about the different symptoms. That's my biggest symptom. I have to watch my sodium very closely. I stick to 1,500 milligrams a day. And if I go out to dinner, I'm going to gain weight that day, not because of whatever fat content there might be in the food, but because of the sodium content. So I don't drink coffee anymore or drink anything with caffeine in it at all. I have given up soda, and because it's a vasoconstrictor. Anything that constricts my blood vessels affects me quite immediately. And like if I inadvertently get served something with caffeine, I get chest pain. I feel it. So that's, to me, the biggest thing that affects my life. I gain and lose 5 pounds in a day, and I gain and lose 20 pounds quite easily across the span of a week.
Thank you for sharing that. And you didn't see, but there were quite a few heads nodding when you talked about the controlling the sodium in your diet. I saw a lot of heads nodding in the audience. So thank you for sharing that thought with us. Operator, can we have one more caller?
That's actually it for phone calls right now. If other people want to call in, please follow the instructions. We do have a few more thoughts from the webcast.
And there are questions in queue at this time?
So on the web, we have, for other symptoms, we have loss of voice that was mentioned by one of the web participants, and anxiety and depression. We also have, when going into talking about fatigue, a participant talks about the erratic nature of fatigue, and another mentions feeling as if he or she has just pulled an all-nighter, so a bit of confusion, being confused and exhausted. Another participant actually mentions dealing with not looking sick, which is a problem because people don't consider them to have any issues. So that is it for the web at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pujita. Any more final questions from the FDA panel? Yes, Ellis.
All right, I have one more. So one of the panelists mentioned the 6-minute walk and going an extra 100 feet. I wonder how many people here have a 6-minute walk test on some kind of a repeat basis and pay attention to it, keep track of it. Show of hands.
Okay, great. So the question was, how many of you have a frequent 6-minute walk test? It looks like pretty much the majority of the patients and yes, okay. Alice, did that answer your question?
Yes, that's
Okay.
huge. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you all for participating and sharing so many experiences on topic 1. We've learned so much from you on the symptoms, the shortness of breath, the chest pain, how you experience it, and the activities that it limits you on. So thank you for that. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll pick up with topic 2. Thanks, everyone. Oh, I apologize. The break, we'll have a 10-minute break. So we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
Amazing. It reminded me, Alex, my sister, it reminded me of her flowing.
Hello? Okay, we're going to actually take a 15-minute break, so 15-minute break.
Oh my God, no, I didn't even think that it would rush at all. Like, it sounded just amazing. Yeah, it was just really honest. I want to cry for everybody. I was like, I hope I don't start crying because I only have one tissue. Yeah.
Good to see you guys.